So I'm Sian, I'm Director of Client Services at Pan UK, and we are really operating in unprecedented times at the moment. We know that the news agenda is changing by the day, and one of the things that we're finding is that brands and businesses are really uncertain about how they should be continuing their marketing at this stage, whether they should even be marketing at all, and they've really been looking to us for guidance over the past few weeks, and we've been providing our counsel about how they should be approaching their marketing and their comms at this time. So brought together today some of our global leaders. We've got Gareth from our London office, Darlene in Boston, and Thomas, who's one of our global partners in Germany. And we're coming together to really discuss some of these issues and provide some guidance and hopefully some reassurance as well as to how businesses should best approach this situation. So let's start by just having a bit of a discussion about how the coronavirus crisis is affecting communications and what we've been seeing so far. Gareth, is it something you can start talking about?
Yeah, sure. I think that understandably it's a really confusing time for anybody who works in marketing or communications, because on the one hand, I think we all recognize that what we do is important. What we do helps businesses be successful. But on the other hand, it seems like communicating right now is fraught with difficulty. You do not want to be doing anything clearly that capitalizes on corona. That should be a given. That's really, really obvious. But communicating about anything at the moment that isn't directly related to corona might sit uneasy with some people. I'd argue that shouldn't necessarily be the case, and we'll come back to that later. But I think people are understandably feeling a little bit confused about what the right thing to do is.
Yeah. Thomas, what are your views here?
Yeah, yesterday evening, to be honest, I was a bit surprised, watching TV, and I saw all these harmony and peace commercials as a break in between these horror talk shows and corona reports. No, seriously, I haven't seen anything that was completely off, and I think this describes the situations. Companies here in Germany act very responsibly and are communicating in a smooth way, perhaps with some exceptions. At the end, I think it depends on industry and the situation the companies are in. Talking about our clients, for example, we have, of course, some clients that are more affected and impacted by the virus compared to others. And so the individual case decides. I mean, one thing is clear for me today, and this is obvious: the ones that have well-established social media channels, for example, are in a better position than others.
Mm-hmm. Darlene, what would you add here?
I think a couple of the words that have come up is just that thoughtfulness for brands. I think we're getting questions every day from clients on, is this the right time to push out this launch? Is it the right time to push out this communication? And, we're managing those client asks on a client by client basis, because every story is different. As Thomas said, it's not a one size fits all. But I think what is relevant for every one of our clients is that it needs to be done with thoughtfulness and care. I think one of the immediate shifts that we've seen from our clients is rethinking their content strategy. So looking at their content inventory. What materials have they already created that can be repurposed for this time to be of value in the market and in today's conversation? And then also, I think that they're looking at their social channels. Thomas, to your point, a lot of our clients have all of those things set in place, but they're pausing to say, do I have the right tone right now on social? Do I have the right thoughtfulness on social? And I think we're seeing some of that change immediately. And then finally, I think the last bit is just being really mindful of making sure that we're not in a product push. Gareth, you said we don't want to be opportunistic here. So we want to be really value focused in the conversations that we're having.
I know another thing that we've been asked by some of our clients is whether all external comms should be off limits during this crisis. Should we be downing tools? Darlene, what are your thoughts there?
I think it's the exact opposite. I think communications is imperative right now, starting with internal communications, but, following that, the external communications piece, I think it's absolutely more important than ever. One of the things that we have seen is clients who can provide immediate value, we're seeing them move very quickly to offer something up to the market. So, for example, our Toast client launched their Rally for Restaurants campaign, which was all about helping small business restaurants support them in this time where, you know, many small businesses are having to close because of coronavirus. So they're actually calling on consumers to buy gift cards to support local restaurants to help those businesses thrive in this market. Likewise, we're seeing, you know, a brand like SAP Ariba that's helping with the supply chain conversation. So helping to match if your supply chain has been impacted, finding another supply chain vendor whom you can be partnered with. So we're seeing some clients move immediately towards communicating how they can help and support. So that's some of the immediate things we've seen.
Great. And Gareth, do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, if you're a brand or a business that's got a product that can be especially useful at this time, clearly there's nothing wrong with reminding people of that, as long as you're not doing that in order to sell more stuff. I mean, you know, we work with a business called 8x8, which does remote working software, and clearly there's a very clear opportunity for them to give advice and guidance and help to those billions of people around the world that are trying to figure out, in some cases, how to work from home for the first time. We work with a business called Degreed. Degreed is all about helping businesses evaluate the skill base that they have in their business and also upskill people, help them with remote learning and things like that. And again, you know, there are people out there that have perhaps a little bit more downtime than usual, and Degreed is packaging up useful things that people can quickly access and learn about for free to make use of this time. So I think there's lots of ways that the clients can authentically join the conversation that's in a way that is genuinely useful and helps us all get through this.
Thomas, are you finding the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with my colleagues here. I mean, it's obvious the strategic role of communications is fundamental, yeah, and this is really obvious in these times. Again, the individual case decides, this is clear, but everything that is done or has to be done, of course, ideally should be done with strategy and well coordinated, yeah.
Great. So one of the things that's been sort of seeing starting to come out into the news is almost the positivity and brands that are really starting to support the efforts to try and do some good, you know, in the midst of all the chaos. What useful things do you think that brands and businesses can be doing at this time? Thomas, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, first thing, but no rocket science. Ideally, companies really stand for all the rules and regulations that are out there, yeah, so that they are really building trust for themselves. And then ideally, of course, they already have a plan what they are going to do within the next days, within the next weeks, and ideally, they communicate these at least to their employees. And being that clear and being that transparent could take away at least a tiny piece of the worries people and employees have these days. And when you are a company that has resources, that is in good shape these days, then of course you can ask yourself, what can I do to contribute in a positive way to the situation? How can I improve people's life? How can I improve the situation of my employees?
Gareth, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a danger here that people feel that communicating is not the right thing to do. But actually, I would argue right now it's more important than ever. And the brands that make the right decisions and do the right things and communicate well about those, I think, will be remembered for a long time. In my opinion, that's long-term brand building. I make the right choices now. And we see lots of examples of that. You know, in Britain there is a couple of the brewers of beer or gin have repurposed their machinery to create hand sanitizer gel. But I'm not saying everyone can do that, but every business can do something which is beyond their product to directly help effort. And that could be as simple as, you know, hooking up with elderly people in your local area who are isolated, can't take visitors. You know, get your staff talking to those people. There's all sorts of things businesses can do, and I think it's fair play, absolutely fair play, to talk about that good that you're doing, to help
Yeah.
inspire and motivate other people.
Darlene, what have you been seeing?
So I think for some that impact is immediately obvious. So we have a lot of clients in the healthcare space at PAN, and we're seeing them work very quickly to actually help on the front line. So for example, our client Get Well Networks is producing modules and services and products to help with patient engagement. So that you can see immediate correlation to how, you know, clients that are helping kind of prevent the spread or support in with COVID-19. That said, for a lot of our other clients, it's not immediately obvious where they can support. And I think where that support comes in is with the care of their own teams. It starts kind of at home, so to speak. So it's making sure that teams are empowered to work at home. They're being mindful of the fact that they have a workforce that's now working at home with kids or elderly family members, and, you know, whatever that might be, being mindful of kind of the mental health of their employees. And I think that's one area that our clients can have an impact, even if it's not a direct impact from a service or product offering. It's really about the care of the people, because the people are the service, and, you know, kind of in our business and for our clients as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we'll start to see these sort of good stories and that community sense coming through as well.
Yeah.
So another thing that everybody can't fail to have missed, I think, over certainly the last week, is this massive increase in brands sending out communications about their coronavirus preparedness. What are your thoughts on this? You know, what's the right line to take? How much is too much? What should be the role here? Darlene, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think, unfortunately, I think we're past the stage of some of that stuff being relevant. I think the assumption now is that you are prepared. I think what's most important is the internal communications piece of that preparedness, making sure, again, that your internal teams know that your company is prepared for the crisis. They've set the right processes, procedures, guidelines in place for that. I think less relevant on the external communication side. It's really more of an internal communications conversation at this point.
Yeah. Gareth?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think there's a danger of brands just adding to the white noise, you know, at a time when, you know, sometimes our attention needs to be on other things. The other thing I would add is I think it is dangerous for marketers or brands to start trying to give public health advice when we're not necessarily you know, that's for governments and public health bodies to do. And I have seen a little bit of that creeping in. However well-meaning, let's leave that to the experts.
Thomas, what are you seeing in your market?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with what my colleagues say. And I think the situation in general is quite similar here in Germany. I mean, I assume that what we see now is something like the initial rush of communication. So for me, I'm rather interested in what will happen during next days, during next weeks. And I think then we really see who is doing a good job.
Yeah. And on that, I suppose, you know, another question that we're being asked is at what point does this situation start to move forward again? You know, we've got brands and clients that are obviously being very sensitive and mindful at the moment, not to be seen to be pushing products when, you know, the news is full of very serious life and death situations. When do you think brands can start marketing at full speed again? You know, is that in sight, do you think? Gareth?
Well, I think the general principle is that what we do is important, and if people stop buying and selling stuff, then we have a huge problem all around the world, which will last a lot longer than it's currently due to. So I don't personally think it is wrong to market things, as long as you're doing it in a way that's sensitive and you're not trying to link what you're doing directly to Corona. So, you know, I would say people absolutely should still be marketing, because we need it. Marketing is needed at this time.
Thomas, what are you finding?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends a little bit on industry. I think definitely tourism is in a different situation compared to the B2B tech industry. So, but to give an example, one of our tech clients here had to cancel the most important trade show this year, just 2 weeks ago. And they now were in a situation, due to our help, they are already way beyond full speed. Yeah, they are on hyper speed just right now with their communications in a positive sense. Yeah, because they shifted all their communications into the digital sphere. And so there are a lot of things that went on I'm talking about marketing, I'm talking about media relations, I'm talking about setting up webinars, I'm talking about preparing content so that people can experience the company in the internet somehow. So as I said, it depends on the industry, on the company, and on the situation the company is in just right now.
Yeah. And Darlene, your thoughts?
So I think, to Gareth and Thomas's point, I think marketing will play a critical role in rebuilds. It will be really important for the rebuilds that we're marketing and having conversations. I think the industry will really inform what those conversations are. So really being attuned to our listening and monitoring tools to kind of see what the broader conversation is, and where we can insert value into that conversation. And I think for all marketers, it will be standing back and working within the new norm. We will not go back to just picking back up in 60, 90 days where we left off. I think that every company, every client is going to have to go back and rethink, does the strategy fit the state of affairs today? Because, as we've discussed, this is unprecedented, and it changes the way that companies are going to be doing business. So, starting from a fresh vantage point will be really important.
Absolutely.
Just one thing. Sorry, Sean, I'm just going to add one thing to build on Darlene's point, because I think listening is really, really important when you're deciding when to start engaging. There's some really good stuff. I've seen YouGov, the British research company, has released lots of really interesting free data about consumer behaviour around the world, which is being updated every day. And it's important to remember different markets are at different places with this. And obviously for global marketers, those kinds of free insight tools I think are really, really useful.
It's a really good point, thank you. So finally, obviously we're talking a little bit about this sort of new world order that we're all working in, and obviously we're all working from home and working remotely today. Have you got any advice in terms of how you're sort of managing to stay productive, how you're keeping things running smoothly while you're in this crazy new environment?
I'll go with that one. I think, for me, there's lots of brilliant advice out there. I think having a routine is really important. Getting up, getting changed, shaving, all that kind of stuff, which certainly I do each day. But it's also finding outlets as well, because with lots of your escape routes, if you like, being taken away, which for me is sport, and sport that my kids are involved in, it's finding other escape routes. So I'm getting very good at the guitar. I'm subjecting my children to lots of impromptu concerts. That's working for me.
Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, as Gareth says, there's a lot of inspiration in the internet to be found. I personally am interested in some kind of movement and physical exercise. And so, for example, yesterday my two boys and I invented the indoor tennis tournament. So just take a tennis ball, put some books on the floor, sit down, and let's go. Yeah.
I'll have to try that one. How about you, Darlene?
I think likewise, just trying to look at ways to stay sane. Keeping a schedule. I do try to get up in the morning and meditate and have a moment before the chaos starts. And then also, just knowing that it's not going to be business as usual and everything is normal. My kids pop into client calls. My husband and I are navigating working in the kitchen, and there are all these different ways. Just knowing that that's kind of the state of affairs, and forgiving ourselves and forgiving others that it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. We're kind of all in that together. So
great. Well, listen, thank you all of you so much for sharing your insights today. I mean, I think we're all, one thing's certain, that this situation is not going away anytime soon, and it's likely to change again, over the course of this week, next week. So we're going to be monitoring this really, really closely, and we're going to be holding some more guidance discussions over the next coming weeks. So please keep an eye on our content feed. If you've enjoyed this discussion, we'll be putting more content out on LinkedIn, and you can follow us on Twitter at pancom.com. See you soon.